We begin with developing news. A pastor has died after getting shot during church services today, and police say the suspect is the pastor's brother.
I heard two shots. It wasn't a minute, and I heard two shots, and so I just got everybody.
Have you seen the video from Northeast Pennsylvania? A pastor is mid-sermon when a man in the crowd points a gun at him. The trigger is pulled, but the gun jams. He survives by sheer luck. But not every pastor gets that miracle. In this video we look at two pastors who didn't get that chance. Two respected men of faith, both down, not by strangers but by people they knew. People they trusted. People they never imagined would turn on them. First, in Dayton, Ohio, Reverend William B. Schooler had just stepped away from the pulpit when shots echoed through the sanctuary. Chaos followed. Parishioners ducked, screamed, fled. And when the smoke cleared, the gunman was still inside, calm, waiting. It wasn't an intruder. It was his own brother, Daniel Schooler. A family feud that ended in blood, right in the heart of a house of worship. Then in Memphis, Tennessee, another pastor, Ricky D. Floyd, was gunned down outside a bar just after 1 a.m. A local leader, a mentor to youth, a man known for his anti-violence work. The woman who hit him? Samantha Marion. She says she feared for her life. Prosecutors say she chose to end his. Two pastors. Two fatal encounters. One down by a family member in front of his congregation. The other shot by a woman he barely knew after a confrontation spiraled out of control. What do these cases have in common? The danger didn't come from outside. It came from the people standing closest to them. Let's get into it. Before he was a headline, William B. Schooler was a fixture in Dayton, Ohio. A man known for showing up, speaking with purpose and leading without ego. Born in 1945, he carried a strong sense of responsibility from an early age. That sense of duty led him to the U.S. Army, where he served in Vietnam and returned home a decorated veteran, having earned the Bronze Star. But his greatest work didn't happen on the battlefield. It happened in classrooms, sanctuaries, and city meetings. After the war, William became an educator. He taught, mentored, and eventually led as a principal in Dayton's public schools in Jefferson Township for nearly 2 decades. When he retired from education, William didn't slow down. He stepped fully into his ministry, becoming the pastor of St. Peter's Missionary Baptist Church. His sermons were practical, hopeful, and rooted in love.
See, on Facebook, you look for likes. In this book here called the Bible, you look for.
Outside the pulpit, he served as interim president of the Dayton School Board and led the local Baptist Ministers Union. He championed youth programs, justice reform, and community development. He often spoke about violence among young people and the urgent need for change. That commitment to peace ran deep. But what no one could have predicted was that his life would be taken by the very kind of violence he worked so hard to prevent. Not from the streets, not from a stranger, but from inside his own family. From someone he likely once tried to protect. William and Daniel Schooler were 2 of 13 siblings, born into a deeply rooted family of faith. Their father, Reverend Alan Schooler, once led St. Peter's Missionary Baptist Church before William took over. The church wasn't just their family's place of worship, it was part of their legacy. Growing up, the brothers shared the same roof, same pews, same values. But as they got older, their paths split. William built a steady life of service. Daniel didn't. Family described him as once bright and kind, but something changed over time. His behavior became erratic. He was later diagnosed with bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, illnesses that, left untreated, became harder to ignore. If you're finding these stories meaningful or informative, please consider subscribing to our channel. It really helps us keep bringing you more content like this. By 2011, the quiet tension between the brothers erupted into a public legal battle. Daniel sued William and the church, claiming he was owed part of the property tied to their father's legacy. The court dismissed the case. The family tried to move on, but Daniel didn't. Bitterness settled in. It was a typical Sunday at St. Peter's Missionary Baptist Church. Reverend William B. Schooler had just stepped away from the pulpit and into his office, a familiar routine after service. At the back of the sanctuary, a man entered quietly. Daniel Schooler, William's younger brother. He didn't draw attention. He sat in a pew, still and composed as if he were just there to listen and pray. After a moment of prayer, Daniel rose. No words. No signs of struggle. He walked toward the back, past familiar faces, and straight into his brother's office. Then, fire. The sound echoed through the church, 4 quick shots. Chaos erupted. People screamed. Some ran for the exits. Others froze, unsure of what was happening. No one imagined that violence like this would find them here, in a sanctuary meant for healing. Within minutes, police arrived. The man with the gun still inside. Not hiding. Not running. Just standing near the office where his brother now lay motionless. Daniel didn't resist arrest. He surrendered calmly as if nothing had happened. But something irreversible had. He hadn't come to cause mass harm. He came for one man. And that man was his brother.
We begin with developing news. A pastor has died after getting shot during church services today, and police say the suspect is the pastor's brother.
Now it was around 12:30 this afternoon. Churchgoers are telling us that the choir was singing. Schooler had just walked into his office. That's when the gun followed him and the shot fired. The pastor died immediately. Naturally, no one expected anything like this.
The scene inside St. Peter's was haunting. Behind the pulpit, in the office where Reverend William Schooler once counseled and prayed, his body lay still, marked by 4 shot wounds to the arm, abdomen, hip, and shoulder. There were no signs of a struggle. No overturned furniture. No defensive injuries. Just silence, broken only by the violence that had already unfolded. Investigators recovered a .380 caliber handgun from the desk. Spent shell casings scattered the floor. The bullets matched the ammunition later found in Daniel Schooler's pocket. Witnesses confirmed what police had suspected. There had been no argument. No shouting.
Then we heard pow, 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 and that's when everybody started running. My coat and my purse are still in there. All I have to use this walker, and we all ran out.
Daniel hadn't burst in with anger. He had moved with quiet intent. Walked into the office. Fired. Walked out. Officers questioned Daniel at the scene. He said little. He didn't show signs of panic or confusion. He didn't deny it. And he didn't offer a reason. As word spread, the community staggered. People who had seen Reverend Schooler just minutes before were now learning he was gone. Church members, still processing the chaos, asked themselves the same question. Why? How could this happen here, and from his own brother?
We had a gentleman come in, and he went to sit down, doing prayer, and he sat there for a few minutes, and then after prayer, he got up, and he went back in our pastor's office, and then I heard 2 shots. It wasn't a minute, and I heard 2 shots, and so I just got everybody out of the church. And we just kept hearing shooting, bang, bang, bang.
But to detectives, one thing stood out early on. This wasn't impulsive. It wasn't the kind of crime that erupts from a split-second argument. This had been specific, measured, personal, and it had a long shadow behind it. Daniel Schooler didn't come out of nowhere. His name was already known to law enforcement, courts, and even his own family, for all the wrong reasons. In 2001, he shot his own nephew. Charges were never filed. In 2002, a woman visiting his home was beaten, bitten, and attacked with a knife during a 40-minute assault. Daniel was convicted and sent to prison. By 2007, he struck a friend in the face with a golf club, completely unprovoked. A year later, he threw a hammer at 2 men, then chased them with a knife. Each case pointed to the same pattern: erratic, violent behavior. And each time the same explanation surfaced: Daniel wasn't well. He'd been diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, but he often refused treatment. Family members, including a niece, spoke openly about his condition. The courts flagged him as mentally ill and in need of help. But help never truly came. And over time, the warnings began to sound more like background noise than real alarm. People close to him knew he struggled. But he wasn't a stranger in the system. He had slipped through it. What made it worse was that many believed Daniel wasn't evil, just sick, lost in a mind he couldn't control. Still, the violence kept escalating and the red flags kept piling up. The tragedy at St. Peter's didn't come without warning. It came after years of them. And no one, family, police, courts, or community, was able to stop what came next. When Daniel Schooler appeared in court, he looked calm, just as he had the day of the shooting. No outbursts. No visible remorse. He faced multiple charges: 3 counts of murder, 2 counts of felonious assault, and 2 counts of having weapons while under disability. The courtroom was tense. Family members from both sides sat in silence, still trying to process how this had even happened. Daniel's defense leaned heavily on his mental health history. They raised concerns about his ability to understand what he had done and questioned whether he was fit to stand trial. After several evaluations, the court ruled him competent. He would face the consequences of his actions. In a surprising move, Daniel claimed self-defense. He said he feared William might harm him. But no evidence supported that claim. There was no struggle. No weapon on William. No signs of confrontation. Just four shots to a man who never had a chance to react. The jury didn't need long. After just 90 minutes of deliberation, they found Daniel guilty of purposeful murder and felonious assault. He was acquitted of aggravated murder, which required proof of premeditation, but the outcome was clear: Daniel would spend the rest of his life behind bars. Even in court, Daniel showed little emotion. No breakdown. No anger. No apology. Just that same unsettling quiet. For the family, it wasn't just about justice, it was about the weight of what had been lost. 2 brothers. One dead. One locked away. And a courtroom full of people left wondering if it could have been prevented. The verdict came down quickly: guilty of purposeful murder and felonious assault. Daniel Schooler would not walk free. He was acquitted of aggravated murder, meaning the court couldn't prove the crime was premeditated in a legal sense. But for those who knew the history, the pain wasn't softened by legal definitions. The reaction in the courtroom was quiet but heavy. William's family, friends, and church members sat with the finality of it all. The congregation at St. Peter's tried to move forward, but something sacred had been broken. The man who had guided them through funerals, marriages, baptisms, and personal crises had been taken, right inside their own sanctuary. 2 brothers. One buried. One behind bars. And a community left to reconcile the kind of grief that has no clean ending. Reverend William B. Schooler was laid to rest in front of a packed sanctuary. Not the one where he preached, but at Omega Baptist Church, one of the largest in Dayton. People weren't just grieving. They were asking hard questions. How did a man with a long history of violent behavior and untreated mental illness get a gun? Why were court warnings ignored? Why did no system, no checkpoint, no intervention stop what felt inevitable in hindsight? William spent decades trying to build a safer, more compassionate world. In death, he left behind a message that can't be ignored. Peace doesn't happen by chance. It takes action, accountability, and the courage to confront what we'd rather not see. On March 12, 2025, just after 1:20 a.m., Memphis police responded to a shooting outside Mama's Bar and Kitchen on Kentucky Street. The scene was grim. A man lay face down on the cold pavement. No signs of a struggle. No witnesses claiming a fight. Just 4 gunshot wounds and silence. That man was Pastor Ricky D. Floyd. He wasn't just any name in Memphis. He was a leader, a mentor, and a voice against the very violence that claimed his life. Known for pulling youth out of the streets and into church pews, his death sent shockwaves far beyond his congregation.
I'm backing back 3 times now. When I do that, you know, back the up. Back the
Standing nearby was Samantha Marion, 42 years old. Officers say she didn't run. She called 911. She admitted to pulling the trigger. Her claim? Self-defense.
I need someone here immediately. Someone has been stopped. He is down. He is on the bus.
Earlier that night, the two exchanged words inside the bar. A confrontation. Floyd threw Marion's phone, then a beer can. Moments later, she had a gun in her hand and he was on the ground. She says she feared for her life. Prosecutors say she made a deadly choice. What happened in those final seconds outside the bar is at the center of this case. And what's missing from the video footage may be the key to everything. Ricky D. Floyd was more than a pastor. In Memphis, he was a voice people followed, especially when things got dark. At 58, he had spent decades speaking to hearts hardened by struggle, preaching peace, offering second chances, and giving purpose to those who thought they had none left. He led the Pursuit of God Transformation Center, a church known not just for sermons but for action. Through his other ministry, Salvation Revelation, he mentored young men at risk of being pulled into the streets. He spoke in prisons, walked through neighborhoods most avoided, and showed up when others didn't. Floyd knew where the pain lived because he came from it. Raised in Fraser, a community often associated with crime and poverty, he carried those scars with purpose. He didn't hide his past, he used it. People trusted him because he understood. He didn't preach from a distance. He stepped into people's lives. To many, he was more than a pastor. He was the one person who believed in them when no one else did. That night at Mama's Bar, he wasn't there for drinks. He was there doing what he always did, reaching people where they were, handing out tracts, planting seeds. And yet, the man who gave his life to ending violence was taken by it. In a single moment, everything he stood for was shattered. The city didn't just lose a leader. It lost one of the few who still believed peace was possible. There's no sign that Ricky Floyd and Samantha Marion knew each other before that night. No shared history. No past feud. What they had was a single encounter, and it escalated fast. It started inside Mama's bar and kitchen. Floyd was handing out religious tracts as he often did, trying to reach people. Marion and her friend didn't like it. Words were exchanged. Maybe it was about space. Maybe it was about belief. Either way, it got loud. By the time they stepped outside, things had shifted from disagreement to confrontation. Floyd, described by some as frustrated and intense, surveillance cameras captured he threw Marion's phone and a beer can. Not exactly the image people had of the calm, composed pastor they saw on Sundays. Marion stood in front of his car with her phone up, recording. She didn't leave. She didn't retreat. She held her ground. Floyd got out and walked toward her. Her voice, caught on the recording, is sharp.
I'm backing back 3 times now. When I do that, you know. Please. Back the up. Back the up.
Police say what followed wasn't a one-sided attack. It wasn't a clean-cut case of victim and aggressor. It was two people both escalating. Marion says she feared for her life, that she warned him over and over. But prosecutors ask, if she was that afraid, why didn't she just leave? What began as a clash of words over religion became a fatal encounter in the street. Two people, one armed with a message, the other eventually armed with a gun. No history. No build-up. Just one night, one argument, and one irreversible ending. The shooting happened just outside Mama's bar and kitchen on Kentucky Street, a familiar spot in South Memphis, just after 1:20 a.m., except for the voices that had spilled out from the bar minutes earlier. By the time officers arrived, Floyd was on the pavement, not breathing. A gunshot wound to the chest. Marion was still there. She called 911. She admitted to shooting him. The gun was found at the scene. There were no signs of a fight. No bruises. No defensive wounds. Just one bullet, and a man who many thought would never be caught in something like this. A few seconds of chaos. A decision that changed 2 lives. And a community left staring at the pavement, trying to make sense of what happened. As the sun came up over South Memphis, investigators were already reviewing the surveillance footage. They had witness accounts, Marion's 911 call, and video from her own phone. From the start, she didn't deny it. She told officers she fired the shot. But she also said she was scared. The evidence showed that after the initial argument, Marion went to her car, got her firearm, and returned to the confrontation. That detail stood out. It shifted the tone of the investigation. Police didn't see someone acting in the heat of the moment. They saw someone who had a window to walk away, and didn't. That decision became the focal point. Prosecutors saw it as intent. That leaving, grabbing a weapon, and re-engaging made this more than self-defense. It was voluntary manslaughter, maybe worse. Her attorneys argued otherwise. They said it wasn't a plan. It was panic. She felt threatened. She thought she had no choice. Outside the courtroom, public opinion fractured. On Reddit and social media, debate exploded. Some believed Marion overreacted, pointing to the moment she retrieved the gun. Others pointed to Floyd's actions, throwing things, walking toward her, not backing off. Adding another layer, the original district attorney recused herself, citing personal ties to Floyd. A new prosecutor, Megan Fowler, took over. The case moved forward with a charge of voluntary manslaughter. For many in Memphis, the law felt too small for what happened that night. This wasn't a robbery. It wasn't domestic. It was two strangers, one with a message, one with a gun, colliding in public. One is dead. The other may spend years behind bars. Samantha Marion wasn't known to police. No history of violence. No prior trouble. Her mother says she was scared, not confrontational. The defense agrees. Marion panicked when Floyd threw her phone and came toward her. They say she just wanted him to stop. But prosecutors focus on the timeline. Marion walked away, got a gun from her car, then came back. They argue that's not fear, it's intent. The video shows her yelling warnings, but also standing her ground, gun in hand. The courtroom became a standoff of its own, 2 versions of the same seconds. Was it self-defense or an overreaction? The judge ruled there's enough to go to a grand jury. A decision is pending. Outside, Memphis is divided. Floyd's funeral drew crowds. His church promised to continue his work. Online, the debate rages. Was Marion a scared woman or someone who chose violence? This case isn't just about a shot fired. It's about what fear looks like, how quickly things can spiral, and how hard it is to define justice when both sides carry pieces of the truth. Floyd preached peace. Marion claims she feared for her life. Now, a city waits to see what the law decides. But one thing is certain. Nothing can undo what happened outside Mama's bar that night. That night, he walked into a bar with a message of faith. Minutes later, he was gone. His congregation continues to gather. They pray, they remember, and they move forward, not because it's easy but because Floyd taught them to. His men still visit schools, still counsel at-risk youth, still preach peace. They say if they stop, then everything he built dies with him. But beyond the church walls, Memphis is left asking hard questions. What does self-defense look like in a moment of chaos? Who gets to feel fear, and whose fear is believed? How fast can words become weapons? There's no verdict that can solve that. The law will do what the law does. But this case forced a conversation. About fear. About presence. About when to stand your ground, and when to step back. Floyd believed in change. Not the kind that happens in courtrooms, but the kind that happens one person at a time. That belief is now in the hands of those he left behind. This case won't be remembered for a legal outcome. It will be remembered for what it exposed, and what it cost. Because in the end there are no winners. Just a city trying to carry on. A pastor's voice now gone quiet. And a moment that should have been small, but turned into something no one can take back. Take care, stay alert, and we'll see you in the next video.
I'm backing back 3 times now. When I do that, you know. Back the up. Back the
Then the video drops out.